So, hey everyone, welcome back to this special series of Collegedunia where we take interviews of all those students who have converted India's top B schools. And we have been taking interviews of those students from the past years. But now we have shifted towards students who recently converted India's top B schools. And talking about top B schools, we have Pratyush, who recently converted IIM Ahmedabad. Pratyush, welcome to the series, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. I'm really excited to be here.
So, for all of you who don't know, Pratyush is a general engineer male, and for those who don't know anything about CAT, so in general engineer males, we call it gems. Gems, have a disadvantage in CAT, but Pratyush went against all odds and cleared the CAT exam with 99.93 percentile. Just let you know, guys, I tried for CAT exam for 2 years and I was able to score just 96 percentile. And here is Pratyush who just scored 99.93. So I don't know how he did that.
Even I don't know how I did that.
But we are here to analyze it. We are here to break it down, and we are here to work upon some of the strategies that the students can also follow. And Pratyush, before we move on, I've already told all the audience about your percentile, but let's have a brief profile. So what was your brief profile before you gave CAT or currently?
Okay. So I did most of my schooling from Noida. And in my 10th, I have a 10 CGPA in CBSE, which comes to a 95%.
Right.
In 12th, I have a 92%. And I did my undergraduation in electrical engineering from VIT Vellore, where I graduated with an 8.6. So that comes to an 86%.
Right.
Apart from this, since last January, I've been working at ZS Associates in their business consulting vertical. And but only 1 month of it was captured in my CAT application form. So when I went to the interviews, they were treating me just like any other graduate or fresher. Yeah.
Right. So there's a thing now that so anything any work ex under 1 year is considered to be a fresher.
Yep.
I don't know why, but that's okay. So Pratyush, we have recently seen these trends that the general engineers or engineers in general are very good in quants. So
Yeah.
what is your take on that? How was your quants?
I got a 99.57 in the sectional quant, and fortunately for me, over the last few years, the CAT quant section has been very heavily dependent on arithmetic, which is naturally my strong suit. Right? I wasn't that comfortable with geometry. I tried to do as much as possible and build up most of my weaknesses into an area where I can tackle most of the easy and medium problems. But still, if you give a geometry problem to me even today, which is slightly on the tougher side, it'll probably take longer than most people. So that thing worked for me. CAT has over the years become very arithmetic heavy, and arithmetic was naturally my strong suit. Algebra was naturally my strong suit, and I just played accordingly. So I do believe that engineers have this edge because they have been dealing with numbers throughout their 4 years in engineering, right? The only part they have to work on is possibly calculations, because in engineering you have a calculator, and CAT has been very generous to us. They have given us a calculator in CAT as well, right? So even that hindrance has gone away. So apart from that, yeah, I think engineers do have a certain edge. There's no, denying of that.
Right, perfect. So Pratyush, before we move ahead, I want to tell all the audience members who have recently tuned in. So we are going to take a certain interview of how the experiences he faced during the IIM Ahmedabad's interview. So stay tuned. The interview will be here in a while. But let's talk, Pratyush, about the arithmetic part, right? So
Yeah.
Is it safe to assume that solving the entire CAT exam is not the end goal, right? You just have to solve certain parts of the CAT
True.
exam with 100% accuracy, and you're bound to get 100% right.
Correct.
So let's talk about that. So how much of the CAT paper you actually solved?
My raw score was about 100. I think the maximum marks was 198 in this year's CAT. So you can see that's around a 50% gave me a 99.9 plus, right?
Right.
So the CAT in general has always been about getting 50% of the marks and making sure you clear the cutoffs for all the three sections, right? So even when coming to quant, I had something around of a 33, 34 raw score in quant. I don't know how it got scaled. I don't remember, but again, you see, out of 20 questions, 22 questions, which comes to around 66 marks, a 30 is a safe 99 sectional plus. So even if you attempt 50% of the questions correctly, right, you are there. You are going to make it to one of the top B schools in the country.
Right. So see, students, just like Pratyush did, you just need to attempt only 11 questions out of 22, and that gives you 100 percentile, right? So students, see, if you think that you'll attempt every question of the quant exam, that will not going to happen.
Correct.
Maybe it will happen for you, and that's good for you, but you should target of accuracy rather than attempting it. So target
Correct.
accuracy, improve your accuracy, and bang on, you'll be there.
Plus the CAT question setters, they set this paper so beautifully. There will always be those questions which are there just as traps, right? If you will feel that I know this, I can solve this, you'll end up wasting 10 minutes and just get 2-3 questions. It's not worth it. Move on. My personal goal was, if I cannot see myself after 1 minute, if I cannot see myself solving the question in the next 30-40 seconds, just move on.
Right. So you gradually, gain this ability to also leave the questions, and that is
Correct.
That is one of the crucial things in the CAT exam, right?
Yes.
You just don't have to stick to that question. You just don't have to take this on your ego. कि ये तो मैं करके रहूँगा, मुझसे कैसे नहीं हुआ. That's not the
Correct.
point.
Correct.
I wanted to solve more questions, but with greater accuracy.
Correct. Yeah.
So Pratyush, you just mentioned that you've been working with a certain organization since January, right?
Yeah.
So how tough was it to manage the CAT exam along with your work experience?
I've been getting this question so much. Like every other person has been asking me this.
Okay, I'll reframe it. How easy was it?
It wasn't easy at all. Like, I work in the consulting industry, and for those of you who don't know, it looks very glamorous from the outside, but it's a very long hours, right? I mean, there were days when I logged off at 2 a.m. in the night, and I kind of pushed myself that next 45 minutes I'll just revise something from quant or something, right? So that intrinsic motivation is going to be there, because to be honest, let's face it, no one actually forced me to give CAT. It was my own motivation. So if I have to give CAT, if it's a priority for me, I need to make time as much as possible. The second point is, a lot of the advice that is given to CAT aspirants, that you need 1.5 to 2 hours daily, right? It won't really go for a lot of us working professionals, right? Especially for someone like me who was working in consulting, there was no way I could commit 2 hours at a stretch daily. So I tweaked my preparation accordingly. So if I had 15 minutes after lunch, during my lunch break, okay, let's use that to solve, let's say, one exercise sheet or do a couple of RCs, right? If I generally wake up at 9 a.m. I'm a late riser. I pushed myself to wake up at 8 a.m. So I have that 1 hour before work, right? Similarly, as I mentioned, even if I'm logging off at 2 a.m., even if it's for the next 20-30 minutes, just push yourself to revise something or the other. The second part is mocks. Like once you're through with 60-70% of your syllabus, I would say please start taking mocks, because what mocks give you is a daily target or a weekly target. After writing one mock, for the next 1 week until my next mock, what I used to do is to simply analyze that, go through the solutions, solve those questions again, and naturally you would get to know what areas you are not that comfortable with. So if I know I'm struggling with averages, next 1 week it's going to be just averages in quantitative ability. So I would say I won't hesitate to say that for working professionals, it's slightly more tougher than it is for college graduates. But again, no one really forced you into this. You have to make your own time.
Right. So basically what I can see is it requires a lot of strictness with yourself, a lot of discipline with yourself, and a lot of truthfulness to yourself. Okay, I will push myself, I'll do this, I'll do that. And you have to do it, basically.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of creativity as well. I mean, 10 minutes here and there.
Right. So you have to manage your time accordingly. Okay. So we'll get to the detailed analysis of mocks later. So let's talk about Pratyush, the VARC section, right? So it has been seen that for engineers, VARC section is somewhat that troubles them, right? So what was your strategy in the VARC section?
So touchwood, I was naturally good at VARC. I have a 99.98 in VARC. That was actually my best section across the three. So for VARC, what you need to do, and there is no getting away from this, is build a very sound reading habit. Nothing else will work, right? People waste a lot of time studying grammar, studying word meanings, doing all these complicated books, building, those speed reading techniques. None of it is going to work, right? Because if you see the CAT passages, they're maximum between 350. They will be between 350 to 500 words. It won't go above 550 words. I don't think in any mock I faced more than 550 words.
Right.
So that's actually very doable. But what people don't realize is that these are not easy passages to read, right? Some of them might be dense, some of them might have multiple arguments being made in every paragraph. So you need your full concentration, and there is no magic button. It's not कि आज मैंने decide किया, आज मैं full concentration, I'll read all the RCs with full concentration. It doesn't work like that. The way it works is that if you are a natural reader who gets into his or her own zone while reading, your brain subconsciously starts collecting information as you read through. Right. And speed reading, again, if you try to speed read, you're going to miss some of these nuances in the passages. And again, CAT RC's VARC section, it's not ki ye pad ke tell me what did the author say. It's not asking me what's the capital of Delhi. If it's a passage, it'll ask me, okay, which of these will support the author's argument, which of this negates the author's argument. So you need to know why the author is even writing the passage to begin with. He could have just wasted his time. Why is he writing this for me? So to understand all of this, you need to build a sound reading habit. You need to start reading organically. The speed reading part, it'll happen on its own, right? If once you get into the habit. So one thing is reading, this is for RCs, and this also translates for the VA section, because the second part, again, summaries, again, completely reading based. Parajumbles, you will be able to do it only if you understand how paragraphs are structured. If you read a lot, you will know ki yaar kaun sa sentence is a good opening line, which sentence actually concludes, which sentence needs to follow something while making a coherent, sensible argument. Okay, all of this will happen only if you read a lot. And the last part of, again, odd one out, this is again something that you will get to know only if you read a lot. You will understand how arguments are made by authors, which of these can possibly be separated to a separate paragraph, which of these doesn't actually fall into what the author is trying to say, right? And the best or the worst part about RCs is almost 90% CAT aspirants who are preparing seriously, right? I'm not saying every CAT aspirant, because a lot of people just fill the forms and then go to give the exam. But a lot of those who take the exam seriously, they can narrow it down to two options, the last two options. To get past that, you need to read a lot, you need to practice a lot, and you need to have your full concentration. So that will be my only strategy, read a lot.
Right, Pratyush, so let's say ki, I'm not a born reader, right? So, but I need to fast track my CAT score for VARC. Let's say I just want to clear the cutoffs and I want to hit the 90 percentile, right? I don't want any fancy marks. I don't want any more marks. Okay. So how should I proceed? What should be my then strategy?
Okay. So the first part is that subscribe to any newspaper that you can get your hand on. There's a very simple reason for this. A newspaper will give you articles from various different topics. Right. Otherwise, there's one risky. I read a lot of economics, and there's when there's a psychology passage, and I'm not able to follow. This happened to me. I'm not from a social sciences background, so the moment I used to see some social sciences, paragraph or something, I used to lose interest. Right. By reading across sources, you're avoiding this problem. The second thing is, within the RCs itself, try to understand what your strengths are, right? Or what approach works for you. For me, for example, I used to like going through all the RCs in one go and then moving to VA. A lot of people who don't really have that good of a reading speed, or they are somehow not that comfortable with RCs, what they would do, they would start with the VA section and then they would come back to RCs. Some people would split 2 RCs, then VA, then again 2 RCs, because a lot of these people felt that if they go for all the RCs in one go, they won't be able to complete the VA. So take it 2 RC kar lo. 2 RCs means at least 8 questions. Then you go to the VA section, which is slightly can be done slightly quicker, and you come back to RCs, so that even if the timer goes, you have answered enough to clear the 95th percentile, right? Okay. So again, for this, as I mentioned, start taking mocks, because the moment you take mocks, you'll start to understand what your natural strengths and weaknesses are, what your strategy should be. One size cuts all doesn't work over here. Right. So that will be my only strategy.
Right. So Pratyush, perfectly put. And let's talk about the LRDI section, right? It is a section that troubles both non-engineers and engineers alike, right? Correct. So how did you approach the LRDI? What did you do differently that no one did, right? So how many sets did you do? What was your strategy? How many variety of sets did you do? What was like?
So, a lot of people are going to be shocked here. I have a 99.93 in CAT, and I didn't even complete one complete set in the entire LRDI section in CAT 2022. Okay,
What?
so it is possible to do this. I was naturally, I wasn't that good at LRDI. Okay, it was
Right.
the section used to trouble me the most. So after giving a lot of mocks, what I realized is that if I try to chase sets, it's not gonna work for me. It works for a lot of people. For me, it doesn't work. I realized this. So then what I used to do is I used to go first 6 to 7 minutes. It's okay if I don't solve a single question. I used to go through every set, read it in detail, and read every question. So I used to identify the questions from each of these sets, which I think I can do. Right. And this is what worked for me in CAT as well. I did one question from one set. I did 3 questions from one set, and I did 2 questions from one other set. One question I did from a set, but it wasn't correct. Okay, so I won't count that. So that was it. 6 questions, right? Worked for me. And 6 questions, again, you see, it's going to give you a good score because LRDI is the deal breaker these days.
Right.
So for LRDI, there is no substitute to practice. Get familiar with the sets, identify what areas you're comfortable with. I was very comfortable with number-based LR. I was very comfortable with arrangements. I was very comfortable with games and tournaments. I wasn't, that comfortable with some of the circular arrangement and stuff like that, right? Or the nodes questions, the networks questions, right? So learn what sets you're comfortable with. Okay, there are countless resources on YouTube. There are countless video lectures on YouTube. For LRDI particularly, I've observed one thing. It really helps to watch someone else solve it if you can't get something, right? You imbibe a lot of things which the other person is doing. Again, if you are giving mocks from the month of August or July, you'll have good question bank in every mock. So go through those mock solutions, see how the toppers are solving that, and that is something which will really help you. And finally, 90% of LRDI is just about question selection, which will not happen until you give sufficient mocks and practice sufficiently. So you need to pick the solvable questions, because if you get stuck in a set which has been put as a trap, that's the end of it. And as you mentioned about the ego, this is more true in LRDI. Okay. My personal was 10 minute mein nahi hua koi set, so move on.
Right.
I won't take it to my ego. I was weak in LRDI. For some of you, it might work, but at least for me, this worked. 10 minute mein nahi hua, so move on.
Right. So acceptance is the key, guys. You need to accept that this question is not solvable for me at the current moment. Maybe the circumstances would have been different. I would have solved it, right? But that's okay. If you don't solve it, it's okay. Move on, right? So Pratyush, we have been talking a lot about mocks, right? So let's talk about the mocks finally. How many mocks did you give for the CAT exam?
I actually don't remember, to be honest. But I think I gave...
mocks that you don't
remember. This not this much, because I was also working, right?
Right.
I was working, and I think I had signed up for Career Launcher and IMS, both of them. But for IMS, I just could give 2 mocks. For Career Launcher, I managed to give all the countdown mocks and a couple of prime mocks. So I think I would put my total number of mocks around 15 to 16, which is not really sufficient, to be very honest. I think I would have liked to do more, but yeah, it just worked for me.
So Pratyush, it is being noticed and it is very, popular on YouTube that more mocks mean good CAT score. But is it true then? And if it is, then there are still certain students who just give around 10 to 12 marks, and like you just give 15 marks and still are able to crack the CAT exam with 99 percentile. And there are certain students like me who gave around 30 to 35 marks and still was able to score 97 percentile. So what is the strategy? So what is your approach in giving a mock, and what kind of concentration does a mock demand? What is it?
See, the thing is, again, I've seen there are 2 extremes over here. Okay, there is one extreme which goes ki ye to mock hai. Okay, nahi aa rahe number, why should I care? This is not the real exam.
Right.
That's one extreme. The second extreme is ki yaar, mock mein I got 30 marks, CAT hoga hi nahi, everything is doomed for me. My life is going to end. I'm going to end up in my company for a lifetime.
Right.
2 extremes. You need to take the middle ground. Every mock is important, because a mock is a tool to help you improve. every mock, like I mentioned, every mock told me what I needed to do for the next 1 week. Whether it's quants, if I am struggling in parajumbles, I'll do a lot of parajumbles. There are countless sites online, right? If I'm struggling with games and tournaments questions, I'll find resources for games and tournaments in LRDI. So a mock is a tool to help you improve yourself. Treat it like that. Okay? Don't give it don't make it overly important. It's not the actual exam. And at the same time, don't brush it aside as well.
Right.
If you are not doing well in mocks, there's a reason for it. Understand that reason. And this is why I said, even after every mock, give yourself sufficient time to analyze it, go through the solutions, identify weak areas, problematic areas, strengths, so on and so forth. So that's one thing. If you are doing this, then I would say, like you mentioned, some people ace it in 10 mocks. This is what they do, right? Just giving a mock is not important. If you're putting in the effort after the mock as well, even 10 mocks is enough. If you're treating the mocks just as a mock, even 50 mocks won't get you anywhere, right? So the thing about mocks is more the better, but again, not just for the sake of giving the mock, right? You need to put in your effort before and after the mock as well.
Right.
So, yeah.
So Pratyush, how do you analyze a mock? Okay, like if you're given the mock, and so for some students it might be very difficult to identify their weaknesses, especially their strengths. The students, okay, so what happens is a student gives a mock, and in a certain mock they score, let's say 60 marks, and in a separate mock they score around 70 marks, but they're not able to identify what is helping for them, what is not, right? So they say in some mocks something works, and in some mocks something else works. So how to analyze a mock, how to strategize that, okay, this is my weakness, this is my strength, I have to work upon it, and how to identify those strengths and weaknesses.
Okay. So the first part is I mean, a bit of it you get to know just after the mock itself, right? Mock ke baad hi, I used to feel ki, yaar, this mock log questions troubled me, modulus questions troubled me. That's one. Second is every good test series will give you a dashboard which tells you your accuracy chapter wise, right? So if I know that so far in all the mocks combined, I have seen about 13 to 15 circles questions, and of them I've attempted 6, of which only 2 have been right. I know circles mein problem hai. Okay. The power of technology is such that it's made life so much easier for us, right? You can simply go to your dashboard and see areas that you're struggling in. On the other hand, let's say for averages, there were 13 questions. You attempted 8 or 9 of them, and of them 8 of 9 are correct. That's your strength area, right? So it's so easy to identify that. So this is one thing. Pay attention to those dashboards which tell you how you're doing for each of the topics, right? How you're doing in RCs, how you're doing in arrangement questions, in LRDI games and tournaments questions, so on and so forth. This part is very important. The second thing is, again, when you look to the solutions, right? You might have attempted a question and you've got it wrong.
Right.
Okay. Something which used to help me is I used to have one notebook where I used to attempt all the mocks, right? So I could, while looking at the solutions, I could go back and see what mistake did I make, right? So you might realize that, okay, you did it right till the 4th step. After that, maybe you made some conceptual error, you missed something, you made some calculation mistake. Then that's the area you need to work on, right? And a lot of people ask me that I'm not able to do well in quants. What should I do? And the truth is, if you have such a broad, weakness such as quants, no one can tell you the solution. You come to me saying, in quants, I realize in mod questions I'm not doing well. Then there's a strategy for that, which you can get online. You can ask your mentors or whoever you're referring to, right? So this drill down analysis is very important. Going back and seeing where you made a mistake is very important. Looking at the solutions and how your approach to a question is different from what the test takers are doing is very important. Because I'll tell you something, you take the CAT exam, you give everyone 6 to 8 hours, everyone will be able to get full marks. They'll get 198 on 198. But there is a certain approach which works in a time crunch situation, which you need to pick up again. So there are multiple ways, multiple checks you need to keep after a mock to be beware of any pitfalls that might come. So all of this really helps.
Right. So Pratyush, let's say I have identified that let's say algebra is my weak area, and once I've identified how to improve it, and let's say even after trying for multiple times, I'm not able to improve it in the mock. then what should I do? Should I leave that algebra area or should I continue working upon it?
Okay, don't leave this at all, because I'll tell you something. When I was preparing for CAT, right, in my final year of engineering, um, I was very weak in geometry, right, and like at that point of time, I had taken grad square who were helping me prepare for CAT, and
Right.
I had gone to them and I said that, look, geometry is not working for me. Should I leave geometry altogether? And they told me in one of the years what happened was IIM Calcutta had set the paper. And that year, for some reason, arithmetic was very tough and geometry had all the sitter questions. Right. So you realize if you're leaving something, you are reducing the total pool of questions you have for you. Because as I mentioned, the CAT paper will have questions which have been put as traps. You need to identify the easy questions.
Right.
So if you're reducing the number of easy questions, you're already at a disadvantage.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So what my advice would be, something which worked for me in geometry, try to make sure you're able to attempt the easy questions of all topics, right?
Right.
So if you are referring to any study material for CAT, they all have the questions divided in multiple sections: level 1, level 2, level 3, so on and so forth. Make sure you're able to identify and solve the level 1 and 2 questions. Okay, so that way you are comfortable doing all the easy questions of any mock.
Right.
So this thing again translate to you. If you're, let's say, even in algebra, if you're algebra is a vast area, if you're struggling in sequences and series, make sure you're able to solve all the easy sequences and series questions that you have.
Right. So that at least you are able to solve the simpler ones and find what are simple and identify that, okay, this is not simple, I'm not going to do it. So let's say, Pratyush, if my weak area comes out to be, let's say, reading comprehension, and I have very less time to improve it, then what should a student do? Should he focus on verbal, or should he continue with the strategy that, okay, if an easier RC comes, I would be able to attempt that RC?
For VARC section, the thing is about VARC, it's very time consuming, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
So what my advice for you would be, one is to jitna bhi ho, start reading.
Right.
Start reading jitna bhi ho. Even if you have just 1 month to go for CAT,
right,
start reading as much as possible across sources. The second part is you can then tweak your preparation. You can start giving the mock from the VA section. And then come to the RCs, because again, fortunately for us, within sections they have no sectional cutoffs.
Right,
so it's not that you need to do itne RCs and then VA. You can comfortably do get all your questions right in VA and then a few others in RCs and still sail through. So you need to identify what you're good at and improve that. Whatever you're weak in, try to get it to a level that it's manageable and you can do all the sitter questions there. And as you mentioned, I think previously, accuracy is important.
Right.
Don't blindly mark something. Look for RCs which are in topics you're more comfortable with, right? If you read a lot, you'll get to know ki, let's say, economics is an area I'm comfortable in. Technology passages are an area I'm comfortable in. Look for those RCs, answer those questions.
Right, exactly. So to all the students, as far as my experience is concerned, I was very good in verbal ability section, and out of the 8 questions of verbal ability, I was able to complete all the 8 questions. So I was able to score maximum from verbal ability, and then I attempted only 1 RC, and just by attempting 1 RC and 8 verbal questions, I was able to go through the sectional cutoff. So it's not about that you have to attempt everything, but it's about you have to identify your strengths and work upon it. And finally, if you think that you don't have more time to improve your weaknesses, then start improving your strengths, start refining your strengths, so that you come to 100% accuracy in the final CAT exam. That's it.
Great.
So, Pratyush, let's talk about that. Did you join any coaching center or not?
This year I didn't, because I had given CAT in 2021 and I had a 99.01 that year.
Right.
So I knew I wouldn't be able to get some of the calls that I was wanting to get, ABC call. So I decided to give another attempt. The thing was, I knew where I had to work on. I needed to improve. What had happened was, again, I had 99 in VARC that year. I had 99 plus in QA, but I didn't do as well as in LRDI. So I just had to bridge my gap in LRDI. So that is what I worked majorly on this year.
Right. So what is your take, and what is your suggestion to all the students, whether coaching is best or the self-study part is the best?
I think it depends. For example, I knew what I had to do. right? There are a lot of people who are naturally strong in quants and a bit, logic, so they don't take coaching and it works fine for them. At the same time, if you're someone who needs a little bit of discipline, because self-learning takes discipline, right? And if you don't think you're the kind of person who will be lazy, it's better to join some coaching, because every week there will be an hour or two of class, right? So again, this is something you will have to find out for yourself. There is no one size fits all strategy. Something might work for you, something might work for someone else. You have to identify that.
Right. So, what type of, what were the books that you followed for the CAT exam?
Okay. So, I majorly followed the career launcher material that is available. So, that was all I did. Again, another pitfall I want to, say out loud is there are people who I call the hoarders. ठीक है, वो जिम में जाते हैं ना, जो सब कुछ लेके बैठ जाते हैं, डंबल भी ये भी. And there's an equivalent in CAT as well. सब ले लेंगे, अरुण शर्मा, IIM, CL, IMS. In IMS, if they realize कि 2 questions के बाद नहीं बन रहा है, they'll switch to CL. CL में again 2 questions later you're stuck, they'll switch to time, and they end up doing nothing.
Right.
Okay, end of the day, because you're actually just running away from your weakness. Okay, you're running away from improving yourself. That doesn't work. Stick to 1 or 2 material at maximum, right? Ask your seniors, ask your friends, जो भी तुमको मिले. For me, I'm a kind of a lazy person, तो मेरे को CL सबसे easily मिल गया था market में, तो मैंने वही उठा लिया था. ठीक है, all of them are equally good. Pick one of them and just work on it.
Right. So to all the students, that's the point, right? You don't have to attempt 1,000, 10,000 questions of mathematics, right? I refer to just one book, and that was Arun Sharma's book, and I completed that book again and again.
Correct.
So that I could, refine my thinking ability towards the quant section as well as for other sections. So you don't have to attempt every question. You just have to revise every question. And talking about revision, Pratyush, so students think that okay, CAT exam कर लिया, 1000 क्वेश्चन कर लिए, 10,000 क्वेश्चन कर लिए, बहुत है, CAT फाड़ देंगे, but ऐसा नहीं होता. You have to revise your questions. You have to revise the important topics. You have to revise what topics did, what kind of, in what mocks you felt difficulties, in what questions you felt difficulties. So you have to revise these things, and Pratyush, you need to highlight this.
Correct. मतलब it's funny you mention this. ये कुछ लोग होते हैं जो CAT को UPSC बना देते हैं.
Exactly.
13 घंटा पढ़ेंगे, 14 घंटा पढ़ेंगे. It's not. If you're giving, there could be a day कि अच्छा you're struggling with geometry, तो आज 3 घंटा लग गया. Right. But if you're giving 1.5 hours a day, that's more than enough to get 100 percentile.
Right.
ठीक है. Exactly. But the thing is, you need to be diligent with it. हर दिन देना है. ठीक है. It's not कि पूरा हफ्ता कुछ नहीं किया, weekend को बैठ के 10 hours. Won't work at all, right? Again, as I mentioned, I was working, so I didn't every day have the luxury of spending 1.5 hours a day. So even I used to spend 30 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day. I used to make sure that 20 minutes has my full concentration. Phone दूर में रख दिया है, ठीक है. I used to sit with a target in mind, कितने questions करने हैं यहाँ से, ठीक है, so on and so forth. So that intensity is more important than the duration of study. And again, revision is again very important. This is why I mentioned the drill down analysis that mocks give you. Your mocks are the best source for getting questions across topics and across concepts, because if you go to your mock analysis, it'll open questions from a particular topic across all mocks, and there you have it. You have all the questions you need to revise and refresh all your concepts.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. So guys, that was it. That was the detailed analysis of the CAT preparation. Ultimately, you have to identify your weak areas, you have to identify your strengths, you have to work upon them, and at the end of your CAT preparation, let's say in the last 1 to 2 weeks, you have to revise, you have to compile everything you have done in the past year. So now we are towards the second part of the interview. And before we go towards the second part of the interview, I have a very Lucifer type of question that scares a lot of students. And that question is, why MBA, Pratyush? Why you want to do MBA?
Why MBA? Okay. There are, countless answers to this.
Right.
And for me, the thing is, I always knew I wanted to do an MBA. Okay. I always wanted to understand business slightly more academically. Okay. Then, as I mentioned, I was working in consulting, and I realized there are certain gaps I have in my learning, which I can fulfill if staying in my firm, but it will take a much longer time. It will be in a very haphazard fashion. Okay, यहाँ से positioning सीख लिया, यहाँ से segmentation सीख लिया, this and that. But there are people, an MBA will give you a structured curriculum, right? And a lot of these lot of my seniors who had done MBAs, they were able to bring in insights from various topics, supply chains, financing, to give recommendations to clients, and that really again pushed me to give a serious attempt in 2022 as well.
Right.
So this was my main motivation for MBA.
Right. And Pratyush, were you able to justify the same thing to the interviewers?
Yep. In fact, I said this exact same thing about my seniors, right?
Okay.
And then the IIM Ahmedabad professor tried to put me in a spot. He said, "Acha, do you think an MBA gives you domain knowledge, like in-depth domain knowledge?" And that I knew that's a trap. I said, "Nahi, it doesn't give me in-depth domain knowledge. What it does, it introduces me to all the domains in the requisite amount, so that I can use all of it to make a sound business decision."
Beautiful. So what happens is that students just give the CAT exam and they don't really know that why are they doing MBA, right? So
Yes.
how do you have any suggestions on how to justify that part in the interview?
See, to be very honest, there are, at the end of the day, a lot of people want to do an MBA to get a higher pay package.
Higher pay package, yeah, of course.
Even the interviewers know it, everyone knows it. Some people were even said ki, by the interviewers कि यार तुम honest बोलो ना क्या चाहते हो, ठीक है? So the only thing is, whatever answer you're saying, you need to yourself be convinced about it, ठीक है? If I wouldn't have been convinced about my answer कि मेरे को सीखना है ये इतने चीजें so that I can come back to consulting and give better insights, I wouldn't have been able to pull it off. If you think कि a managerial role apart from the pay will again give you access to multiple domains instead of just being stuck in one, the growth will your career growth will improve, say it honestly. Just don't say कि अरे यार अच्छा वो आदमी ने ये बोला है, I got this beautiful answer on Quora. एक तो please stay away from Quora. That's a general advice. ठीक है. ये I got this answer from Quora. यही चिपका दूंगा. It doesn't work like that. Please yourself be convinced of what you're saying. That's all.
Exactly. So do your research well, and for research purposes, follow Collegedunia's website. Thank you for your promotion. And Pratyush, let's finally talk about the PI experience, the IIM Ahmedabad PI experience. Before we move on to it, students may not know that IIM Ahmedabad also conducts an AWT, which is basically a written ability test. And Pratyush, what was the topic that was given to you in that test?
So my AWT was actually very long, right? It was a very long passage which talked about a hypothetical employee and the anxiety she's facing because she's seeing job losses and job cuts all around her within her firm and the industry wide. Right. So the goal of the analytical writing test is many. First, you have to analyze all the claims and being made, and you have to see if the conclusion even follows. Like a lot of the assumptions might be in thin air, right? You might not have enough data to back it. You need to write that key. I don't think this follows, right? So you need to analyze every claim the author has made. See if you need more data, you need some clarification on that before coming to a conclusion, and you have to see if the conclusion made by the author even follows this chain. Right. So this is one thing. So in my AWT, I, talked about this, that she mentioned that it's the same across industries. So she probably works in an industry which is undergoing a recession. She mentioned that across firms, her role is the first one which gets hit. So she's probably working in a role in an industry which is not really that integral to it, because otherwise they wouldn't have been the first ones in the line of fire. Right. Exactly. So उसमें थोड़ा बहुत मैंने डाल दिया था, she can cross skill this and that, so on and so forth. Then again she mentioned something about some claim she mentioned, which I understood was just a rant. So I mentioned that this data is not backed up. We need to know this fact as well to understand if this reasoning even follows. So this was how I approached my AWT.
Right, perfect. And finally, Pratyush, it's the time that we all been waiting for, and let's talk about the IIM Ahmedabad personal interview experience. How was it? How many panelists were there? How long was it? What kind of questions were asked? Tell us everything.
So I'll be very honest with you. IIM Ahmedabad interview, I've never given any interview like that ever before. No mock like that. None of my I had given Lucknow and Kozhikode interviews until then. Those weren't like that. I had given, placement interviews during my BTech. Those weren't like that. I mean, it was very weird. And you mentioned about time. My interview lasted just 20 minutes.
Right.
Right. There was some people who were coming out after 40-45 minutes. Mine lasted just 20 minutes. And my first reaction was when she said that she asked, the ending was this, that Pratyush, do you like chocolates? I said, yes, ma'am, I love chocolates. He said, okay, you can take 2, 3, as many as you want, and you can go. And my first reaction was, okay, that's it. Is it just 20 minutes? That's it. So just 20 minutes it was. But those 20 minutes were very intense, right? The moment I walked in, I was the last person in the panel. So even they were wanting to wind up quickly, probably. So I walked in and there's no introductions, nothing. The professor had my PI form open on his tab and he directly picked one question. There was one question in the PI form that if you were to go back in your career, what is one thing you would do differently? And I had mentioned something about that. So he straight away started, why can't you do it now? Right. The next follow up to what that was, again, that the question that I mentioned, does an MBA give you domain knowledge? Once I sidestepped that, the next part of it was, could you explain with respect to your project how an MBA will help you improve, or how you felt an MBA, you are inequipped without an MBA? So again, I talked in detail about one of the projects that I had done for one of my company's clients, and there were counter questions on that. Like every bit of it, there will be counter questions, right? The next part, again, I work in demand estimation and conjoint market research, and again, it depends how you want to take this. The professor was actually a professor of quantitative methods, probability and statistics, so he knew this thing. So there could be two things. If you bluff, he's going to catch hold of you, and then you're going to beg for the interview to end. But if you answer it right, it's a home run straight away. So again, it turned into a mini KT knowledge transfer session. He gave me pen and paper. He asked me, could you walk me through the mathematical assumptions, this and that. I talked in great detail. There were counter questions. There were traps there as well, right? Every now and then. I mean, it seemed at first that he's genuinely interested, but then I knew he knows everything because he's asking all the right questions and all the questions which generally people don't study about, right? So this was the first leg of it, completely driven by my work experience. The second part was even more weird. There was this professor of organizational behavior, and she had been so far visibly disinterested. She was turning in her chair, yawning, and she went through my AWT write-up. She didn't even listen to what I was speaking until then. So then she asked me that, Pratyush, there are a lot of metro projects happening in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. I think all of these are happening in vanity. What do you think? And I wasn't really sure what vanity meant. So I asked her, ma'am, I'm not really sure what vanity means. And she explained. So then, I started giving my take on it, that you can't treat it just from a financial lens. I had read the Delhi government introducing free bus rides, and I drew a parallel that over there the intention was to increase labor force participation of women, make travel safer. It actually removes a sense of lethargy, particularly after COVID, so on and so forth. And the thing is, when you're speaking, when I was speaking, she was very disinterested. She continued yawning, turning in her chair. She was just trying to distract me. I realized because everyone in my panel said they had a similar experience, right? To not get worked up, I'd actually not asked anyone from my panel how the interviews went. I was sitting quietly. I was listening to my music. That was about it. So again, everything that you say, she's going to take a position against you. Right? They want to basically stress test you. If I would have said that, yes, ma'am, I agree, all of this is just show off and micro projects need not be there, she would have taken a position against you. So don't get scared of that. Right? They are just trying to pressure test you and see how you think. Right? And the second thing is, if you don't know something, admit it. Like I said, I don't know what's the meaning of vanity. Right? That's fine. Okay, if you don't know something, don't bluff. Just say you don't know it. They say it politely, ma'am, I'm not sure. That's all. So once this leg happened, the second question again was, why is the labor force participation of women falling? And I honestly didn't know that it was, because I don't have a social work background or as such. So I told her, ma'am, that I am not really sure. I have not investigated this. But based on what you said, this is what my hypothesis will be. Right. So again, if you don't know something, there's one thing, if don't bluff. Secondly, if you think it's possible for you to come up with a hypothesis, say it. Say that I don't know it, but this is what my hypothesis or what my estimate would be. Right. And then walk her through the reasons. That I walked her through, like, let's say that COVID has affected the informal sector. So women are more employed in the informal sectors. Then the amplification of crimes against women, their news and social media might have created a sense of scare. So I gave her a few reasons. Again, she countered everything that I was saying, right? I tried to stay calm. The main thing is just about staying calm, right? So this was the second leg. The last leg was actually very interesting. She asked me, what do you do in your free time? So I said, I watch cricket, I read books. She asked me, which is the last book you read? And I said, I had read Saurav Ganguly's autobiography. And the next part, she's like, okay, I have not read this book. If you were to ask me to read this book or pitch this book to me, how would you do it? So this was unexpected. So I asked, ma'am, could I take 30, 40 seconds? She said, yeah, sure, take it. So then I spun it around this way that, ma'am, I asked them, ma'am, does failure affect you? She said, yes. I asked, sir, does failure affect you? He said, yes. Then I said, okay, then this book is for you guys. Because Saurav Ganguly's life has been full of failures which have been beyond his control, right? And he has bounced back every time. He has talked how he used to perform better under pressure after a while. So I drew insights from that. And again, the moment I got a little comfortable, she broke my rhythm. Acha, theek hai, bahut ho gaya. But don't you think everyone is affected by failure?
Right.
So again, there are two things here. Some people, they are completely thrown off. Some people get very agitated and angry.
Right.
Okay. Gussa nahi karna hai.
You need to
like, yeah, I've seen panels where people have come out, angry and shouting, and don't do that. Right? They're just, their job is to put you under stress. So this question, I said, I drew some insights from my engineering days that there are some of my friends who weren't that affected by failure. If they would not perform well in a certain exam, it didn't affect them as much as it affected me. I would go through why I did wrong and analyze, deep dive everything. So again, she asked me, weren't they just careless? So I said that, ma'am, I don't think they were careless. Even if they were careless, this worked for them. They didn't have the pressure bogging them down. It bogged me down. But I also admitted that, ma'am, I don't really have a very good answer for this. So that was about it, right? Again, then the next question was, do you like chocolates? I said, I love them. You can take them and leave. So I was very surprised. Okay, 20 minutes. I was very surprised because some people had told me Ahmedabad interviews are heavy on academics. I had no question from engineering at all. Then of course the time frame is there. Secondly, at two places I'd mentioned, ma'am, I'm not really sure, I don't know.
Right.
I didn't know how to take those, but everyone outside told me that it's fine. My mentors told me that it's good that you could politely and calmly tell that I'm not sure about something. So this was my Ahmedabad PI experience basically.
Right. So I think Pratyush, your storytelling is beyond, I don't know, because I could really imagine the scenario in front of me. So with that being said, I think we should wind up our interview here only. And to all the viewers, we hope we were able to add some value to your CAT preparation as well as to your interview knowledge. And to Pratyush, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. I really hope my experience helps a lot of the viewers. All the best for CAT. Great. And just one thing I'll end with: the key is not to give up. The last man standing wins. That's all.
Perfect. With that being said, students, like this video, share with your friends, and spread knowledge, and subscribe to the channel Collegedunia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.